Welcome, everybody, to the Cover 2 podcast. My name is Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have another great show for you today. We were blessed with the fortune of seeing Mike Trout sign the largest deal in sports history to re-sign with the Angels. He signed a giant extension worth $430 million. Yeah, that's not a joke. $430 million contract for 12 years. So we're going to get to that in just a bit. Also, we're going to be diving in and finishing off kind of the free agency period for the NFL. There actually still are some free agents of notable names, and there are some signings and trades that we do want to talk about from last week. And we will finish off the podcast. Of course, we can't miss this. Speaking about March Madness and more specifically talking about the first couple rounds, considering that we will have another podcast before the Sweet 16. So we'll give you our upsets, we'll give you our champions, and then we will adjust next week when we are completely wrong, more than likely, about what happened in the bracket. So let's start with exactly. Yeah, I mean, we know we're going to.
I mean, I plan on being right.
Yeah, I plan on getting every single game right.
I've got some good upsets.
Yeah.
So
I do.
I'm actually a little hesitant, as if I want to, share those with the world.
You don't want people to...
But I'm a nice guy, so I think I will let you in on my insights.
Yeah. No, we'll do the good thing, and we'll tell you who to pick, and we'll tell you to be, how to be successful, maybe win some money in your leagues. Just don't play us, because we want our own money. So, but let's start off. Speaking of money, with Mike Trout, we were talking before the podcast. There was not much news really to talk about before yesterday happened and before Mike Trout re-signed with the Angels. This is obviously close to both of our hearts in a way. Obviously on this podcast, I am a Dodger fan. I do cheer for the Dodgers, but I do cheer for the Angels too, okay? I if I haven't said this in the podcast, I'll say it right now. With baseball, I kind of cheer for both teams. Like, I legitimately like the Angels and Dodgers the same. I do not prefer one or the other. If there was a World Series, I'd bow out of it, and I would not cheer for it. I would just...
Really?
I would, yeah. With other sports, it's a little different. I do favor certain teams and stuff like that, as far as teams here in Southern California and stuff like that. But with baseball, I've always liked both teams pretty much equally the same, and I'll cheer one team harder if one team looks more successful, which is, one of the reasons I do cheer for the Dodgers lately, because they have been making the playoffs. They have been getting to the World Series. So it is a little more realistic to cheer for that team. But so for Mike Trout to commit to the Angels until 2030 is a great thing here for people in Orange County, for people in Southern California, and of course for people in the Angels organization. But yes, 12 years, he is now signed on with the Angels. It's a 10-year contract extension after his current deal is up. Jared, what are your thoughts on this? And how did this make you feel yesterday when you heard this in the morning?
I was ecstatic. As an Angels fan, I will say I do follow the Angels more so than the Dodgers because they are closer to where I live. I definitely have gone to more Angels games as opposed to Dodgers games. I have a Mike Trout jersey. Yeah. I have a Tim Salmon jersey. So, listen, I was ecstatic when I woke up yesterday morning, and this happened very early
in the morning. Yeah.
Nick was joking as we were walking up today to the show that, the Angels early at 5 in the morning yesterday sent Mike Trout an email saying, hey, you want an extra 10 years for 430? Yeah. And here you go. I was kind of surprised by this deal because, if I'm not mistaken, I believe as spring training was getting started, Mike Trout was being interviewed. And this was close to when Bryce Harper was getting ready to sign. But basically, Mike Trout was very deflective. He was not necessarily answering a lot of questions about his contract status and really about his future. And it was one of the few times that I felt like Mike Trout was just being distant. And usually he's obviously a very low-key, calm guy, answers every reporter's question. But this time he kind of just was like, I'm not talking about this. I don't want to do it now. Behind the scenes, maybe he was working with the Angels and maybe they just wanted to keep everything quiet. But I was very surprised that this deal happened. But you know what? This just shows Mike Trout's loyalty. It shows that he's obviously very comfortable with his Angels organization. As a fan, I'm ecstatic. I just hope that this Angels team and this organization now will really build around Mike Trout. Because, I'm sorry, but in the first 6 years of his career, the Angels have let Mike Trout down. They have done absolutely nothing and have essentially wasted 6 years of arguably the best baseball player that we have ever seen in baseball history. So I hope the Angels get serious about bringing in better pitching, whether it's starting pitching or in the rotation or in the bullpen, as well as other quality players and even another superstar to bat, to go with Trout as well. Because in today's baseball, I feel like you do need a few stars to help get you over the hump. Listen, let's remember, this is a 162-game season, right? There's going to be, I believe it was last year when Mike Trout hurt his thumb and missed a few weeks. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be times where he may be out or he may go into a little bit of a slump. He needs another batter, someone else that can kind of pick up the slack. It can't be all on him. So while I'm happy about this move, I'm really looking forward to kind of the next step. What are the Angels going to do to surround Trout with other quality players so that this team can finally be true contenders? Like you said, and I forgot about this, the Angels have not won a playoff game, let alone a playoff series, since Mike Trout has been with the Angels.
Yes, 100%.
So that's astonishing right there. So this right now, as good of a move as it was by the Angels, I think a lot of pressure is now on the Angels to compete and build around Mike Trout.
Yeah, no, I think the last time they made the playoffs was in 2014, 2015. They got swept by Kansas City. Weren't even really competitive in the game, and Trout's average in the series was .083. I believe he did hit a home run, but it came at a time where it didn't matter as much. No, you're right. The Angels do need to do something. Obviously, this guy is committed like Bryce Harper. I compare those two contracts more than I'm going to compare Trout's contract to Arenado or Machado's contract, because there are opt-outs in those deals. There are ways for those players to get out of those deals if the team hasn't, per se, built around them. And those are two teams, for example, the Rockies and Padres, that have had difficulty, getting further in the playoffs, doing certain things. So it's a very similar situation there, except those players have opt-outs. Mike Trout did not sign an opt-out in this deal. So he's with the Angels until 2030. And that's until he's 39 years old. I believe that's the age he is. So
that's correct.
he will not. He will be with the Angels his entire career. I don't know if there was a no trade clause or anything. The deal is not 100% done. They're still ironing out certain details. But this is similar to a lot of the NFL free agents that we talked about the other day, where obviously they're agreed upon and they're about 95% done. You're just waiting for the semantics and to see exactly what the money is for these deals and what it entails. But so you're right. The Angels do need to build around Mike Trout. Now, I agree they do need to continue to build and they do need to add players, but they do have now a young core of stars that they can kind of really start to move along. They do have Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher for the future. Now, he just had Tommy John surgery, so he's not going to pitch this year. But come 2020, he should be back and healthy, and you usually don't have Tommy John surgery twice in a season, or twice in a career. So once Shohei Ohtani is 25 years old, you now have an ace of the staff who was pretty good last year, who also can crazily hit, which is obviously a rare thing. But they have an ace of the staff. They have Joe Adell in the minors, although he is on the DL right now for about 2 or 3 months. And then, of course, you have Mike Trout, who is the best baseball player in the world. So as far as that goes, they have a solid young core to start building around. They just have to build around it. And their starting rotation right now is not good to start the regular season. I mean, they have Trevor Cahill as their number one.
He was just confirmed as the opening day starter.
Exactly, and that's why I mentioned that. And you look at a lot of the other good teams in the league, and their number ones are miles ahead of Trevor Cahill. And behind him, you have Matt Harvey, who's had a couple of rocky years, and then you have the injury-prone Andrew Heaney, Tyler Skaggs, and Jaime Barria, who's a pretty young player and could be a good solid pitcher, but he hasn't shown anything yet. So They do. My main focus with the Angels, and I think I've said this a lot on this podcast, and we've been doing this podcast for, over 2 years, and every single year I'm like, they need to improve the pitching. They need to improve the pitching. So, and now you lose your number one ace for this year in Shohei Ohtani. They just need to start really building around pitching. You can kind of supplant hitters in and out and stuff like that. And I think the Angels do have a promising future as long as a guy like Joe Adell and Shohei Ohtani end up working out in the future, because we know Mike Trout is going to work out in the future. Barring a career-ending injury or something like that, you have the best player in baseball on your team in his prime for another 5 years. So I agree with you on that. I just did, real quick before we extend more on this topic, for people that, or actually we could just kind of transition, for people that want to talk about whether this contract is worth it, whether this money is worth it for a baseball player, or for a guy like Mike Trout who's never made the playoffs and has not performed in the one playoffs he made. Let me just give you a couple stats real quick to show you how good of a baseball player Mike Trout has been, and how unbelievable he is, even compared to Arenado and Machado and Bryce Harper, guys that have signed extensions this offseason. Mike Trout's career OPS is he's never had a on-base plus slugging percentage below 939. Most players never even get to 800 in their careers, and
wow.
his lowest ever is 939. He's averaged 34 home runs per year since his first full year in the majors. That includes 33 home runs in 114 games in 2017, which is, you're missing almost 50 games there, and 39 home runs in 140 games last season. So that average could actually be higher, barring some injuries the last 2 years. His career batting average is .307, and he's never batted below .287 in a full season.
Wow.
Career on base percentage is .416. He was the 2012 AL Rookie of the Year, 2014 MVP, 2016 MVP, 7-time All-Star, 6-time Silver Slugger, and he's never finished worse than 4th place in MVP voting. That is the stat right there that shows you he is the best player in the MLB. And a lot of people would argue that some of those years Miguel Cabrera won the MVP, Mike Trout should have won it. And he's also finished second 4 times in his career.
So basically what you're saying is Mike Trout can retire right now and just go...
He would be a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer.
He'd be a Hall of Famer.
No doubt.
For those
really,
years, yeah.
The one, I don't even want to say blemish, because this is not all his fault, obviously. But the one thing that has, is left on his resume is winning a World Series championship.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously they've won the division before. But that seems to be the only thing left on Mike Trout's plate that he has not been able to achieve so far. All of those stats, all of those numbers, and like you mentioned, he has had a few injuries, nothing really drastic as far as Tommy John surgery or anything like that, but he has had a few injuries that have set him back a little bit. And really, so Mike Trout, he is so great because you take Mike Trout away from this Angels team, and the fact that they have not been able to win with Mike Trout, right? You take him away, and that's just even more scary. I think that's really what makes a player an MVP, is the fact that when he's not there, whether it's a rest day, whether he's injured, can the other players around him pick up the slack and win, right? You can go with any sport. You can go with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers,
Very
right?
good example.
When LeBron James was with Cleveland, Cleveland was in the finals almost every year. LeBron James leaves Cleveland from the time when he went to Miami and now with the Lakers, and Cleveland is basically one of the worst teams in the NBA, right? Proving that LeBron James is an MVP caliber player, because when he's not on the court, the team does not perform. Same thing with the Angels. When Mike Trout is not out on the field, the Angels do not perform. Now, a lot of people can say that the Angels don't perform with him on the field. That's a true statement as well. But Mike Trout, it's just astonishing to me, all those numbers. I'm kind of mind blown right now. The fact that he's been able to do that in just 6 years. He's only 27 years old.
Yeah.
Right? It's unbelievable right now. So, yes, I do totally agree with you that they do need to build around him, and it's about pitching. But like I said, I feel that the pressure is not really on Mike Trout, because we know what Mike Trout's going to do.
Yeah,
he's consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. Even if some of those numbers dip, even if he goes from a 307 career average to a 290 career average, 290 is still pretty damn good. Yeah. Okay, so we know what you're getting from Mike Trout. This is about the Angels organization, about what they're going to do now with Artie Moreno, their new manager with Mike Scioscia being gone, and what this team will do to build around Mike Trout and get better pieces. Because looking at their roster as of right now, with bringing in Matt Harvey, that's not like a, oh my gosh,
no,
we have
that's
Matt
a
Harvey.
guess. That's a hope.
Guess.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's a hope right
hope.
now. You have Justin Upton, Andrelton Simmons, and really those are the only players that I'm kind of like, all right, those are
No,
good,
that's true.
solid players.
Yeah.
Like obviously Simmons is more of a
Defensively,
player,
he's the
Gold
best
Glove
player
guy.
in the world. Yeah,
exactly. Offensively, you're going to get some hits from him, but you're not expecting him to be a threat from an offensive standpoint. Justin Upton is a very solid player. Cole Calhoun is up and down in right field. I mean, he's had good years. I believe when he was his first 2 or 3 seasons in the majors, I felt like he did very well. And last year kind of, I think, slipped off a little bit. But really looking at the rest of this roster, first base, Justin Bohr, second base, David Fletcher, third base, Zach Cozart.
They're very average, solid players.
None of those names like get me excited.
Those are the players you add to a team when you have like 7 or 8 legitimate players, and then you have to add. I mean, Justin Bohr is probably gonna be playing with Albert Pujols for first base slots. Bohr was a great player in Miami, but when you're not protected by Giancarlo Stanton anymore, he was then traded to the Phillies and didn't do much. So maybe putting him behind Mike Trout or putting him ahead of Mike Trout, maybe that will help or something like that. But Justin Bohr still needs to prove himself. Zach Cozart got hurt, and he was a guy that played in Cincinnati and had about 20, 30 home runs per year. But in Cincinnati, you take 10 home runs off of there because that field is so short. So you're right. Those are players that need to prove themselves. And then you mentioned Simmons. Simmons, a very wild hitter, not only with just the way he swings the bat literally, but the way he kind of is up and down during the season. And then, of course, you have Justin Upton, who's a pretty solid, consistent player, but he's not going to go above and hit 50 home runs or anything. It's going to be 30 home runs, something like that max, and he's going to bat 270, 280, and there's going to be a lot of strikeouts in the middle of there too. So you're right. They do need to, as far as this year goes, the team it's very, you don't know, and you kind of hope Mike Trout stays healthy, hits 40 home runs, bats 330, is the MVP, and then you can build, and that helps other players. But if Mike Trout, let's say, gets hurt for 40 days, and then they have to rely on Justin Upton to be the number one guy, or they have to rely on maybe having to bring up Joe Adele or something like that, who's only 19 years old, then things are a little different. But as far as just back to the contract part of this, and speaking on the fact that they're going to build around Mike Trout, this is not the Albert Pujols deal. Okay?
No, not at all.
This is not that. Okay? Albert Pujols is expected to get paid $28 million this season. Okay? Luckily, thank the Lord, Albert Pujols is a free agent after 2021. But for the next 3 years, they're on the hook for almost $30 million for Albert Pujols. And Albert Pujols, to be honest, shouldn't be in the starting lineup. I mean, that is being 100% candid. Justin Bohr should be the starting first baseman, and Shohei Ohtani should be the starting DH. Albert Pujols should play sporadically and should maybe get max 100 games during the season. He is absolutely not worth that much. And then you look at Mike Trout's contract, and he's getting paid about $5 or $6 million more, and he's absolutely worth it. So you can start to build around, and you don't have to feel bad about this contract because you know that this guy is going to produce. He's not old. He doesn't have bad knees. He's not out of his prime. He will still be in his prime when his contract is in the middle parts of this year, and even near the end, I feel like he'll still be a solid player because his injuries have been a broken thumb from a slide into first base, and I'm actually forgetting what the other injury was last year. It was a 2-week injury. So he's never been seriously injured to where you'd expect his career to start to diminish at any point. So, with Mike Trout right now, you have the best player possible to build around. So like Jared's saying, just build around him. Just be smart. Add some pitching. Keep drafting well. don't be afraid to bring up rookies and have Trout and even guys like Albert Pujols show them the way it works. Because when you have a star player in Mike Trout, you can bring up rookies because they're comfortable knowing that they aren't the end-all, be-all guys that are going to turn around the franchise. They already have the guy up there. So Joe Adell comes up, hey, just do your thing. You don't need to be the star. You don't need to be the best player in the world. Just do your thing. Ohtani, come here. You're going to be a show. No, no pun intended. You're going to hit. You're going to pitch. But you're still not the guy. You're not the guy that you think of with the Angels. So it's okay to bring guys up. It's okay to bring other players in because they know that there is that star already there.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Albert Pujols is 39 years old.
39 years old, yeah.
And he's getting $28 million a year. Now, I understand in baseball, all contracts are guaranteed, right? But at 39 years old, how much... is Pujols going to play until he's 42? Do you think? I mean, like, why? What makes him...
I think he should... 100% if he has a subpar season and doesn't at least hit 20 home runs, he should retire.
I think he should have retired 2 years ago.
100%.
I mean, you see the guy run down first base, and it's like a 5-year-old can run faster and beat out a ground ball to first base.
Though.
I mean, it's seriously like for infielders, whether it's it doesn't matter, shortstop, second baseman, third baseman, when they get a ground ball from Pujols, you literally see them like pump the ball twice into their glove and just very casually throw it to first base. There is no like quick decision, quick movement. Even if they have to go and dive for the ball, you see guys literally being able to take their time, stand up, set their feet, and then make a nice throw to first base, right? There is, like I said, there's no urgency, and I'm not saying that Pujols isn't trying. He literally just can't run fast.
Just not there.
His knees are shot.
39.
It's just so...
39 and overweight and a bunch of other things that don't work out in your favor.
Right. Basically, what I'm saying is, Pujols can probably still hit, 20, 25 home runs, and he can still give you some stats. He ain't worth $28 million, like you just said. And the fact that he's still playing when I cringe every time he runs down the first baseline... it to me is a little astonishing. It's almost like, okay, man, you've won a World Series before. You've made all the money in the world. What is your incentive to keep playing knowing that you are nowhere near... You are light years away from the old Albert Pujols, who was the former MVP, the guy that you can count on for 50 home runs a season, that player. So I guess I'm struggling with trying to figure out why Pujols is still playing, because I feel like you're right, he's a detriment to the team. And unless he's willing to take a back seat, which he does seem like a team player. So if management came to him and said, hey, listen, we need you, right, we're only going to play you about 100 games a year. You're going to come off the bench, be a rotational player. Then I'm okay with that. I'm still not okay with the number that they're paying him. But if they plan on making him the, everyday starter, if he wants to play 140 games a year, I don't think that's the best recipe for success.
No, it's not. And actually, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here and explain some things. If you're not an Angel fan, if you do follow other teams and do not follow the Angels, even though they're local, Albert Pujols this year more than likely will only hit against left-handed pitchers because of the addition of Justin Bour, who will hit against righties. They should platoon. They should. And Shohei Ohtani is not... I think he just took his first swings of spring and his first swings since having Tommy John surgery in the offseason. So Ohtani is not going to be ready until at least May, maybe June. So Pujols does have that designated hitter spot there for the taking while Ohtani is out. Once Shohei Ohtani comes out, though, if that dude's not pitching this year, which he's not, he needs to be in the lineup every single day. Okay? And I know, he'll have to play DH because obviously he has an injured shoulder, and that, I know that because my brother currently is doing that right now. He only can DH for his high school team because he can't throw baseball because of an injury that was caused during the football season. So Ohtani has to DH. Pujols still can play first base. But so he will have, in a way, a 2-month tryout to prove whether he should even be considered at taking some at-bats from Shohei Ohtani. And he will also only hit against left-handed pitchers, more than likely, so he can only focus on that, and he can just not necessarily worry about getting diced by right-handers. He won't worry about, trying to hit the other way, stuff like that. He can just hit against lefties, focus on that. So he will have some benefits to him with the addition of Justin Bour and the fact that Ohtani is injured for the beginning of the year. But man, if he's batting 200 and he's not hitting home runs, he's not driving guys in, and he's looks unhealthy, it's gonna be tough for Brad Ausmus's new manager to put him in the lineup every day. It's gonna be tough. I get $28 million, but Josh Hamilton wasn't in the lineup. At the end of his thing, and he was getting paid $25. So you don't need to put the guy in the lineup.
Do you think, regardless of what happens with Pujols, I know we got to wrap this segment up soon, but regardless of what happens with Pujols, whether he is able to stay healthy for the majority of this season, let's say he hits 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, and he actually has a pretty good season, right? Maybe still not worth the $28 million, but he has a good season for his age and for what we're used to seeing Pujols do. If I'm the Angels management, do you not try to come to Pujols and say, hey man, listen, like, we think it's time for you to hang it up, like come to some type of mutual agreement? I mean, the thing is,
that's tough. I wanted him to retire, but I was hoping this offseason. We saw news yesterday morning that Mike Trout signed with the Angels. I was hoping this offseason I would see Albert Pujols is not playing for the Angels anymore, and that he's retiring or he's stepping down to a lower role like a Ichiro, maybe going into the front office and something like that. Not necessarily hanging it up for his career, but just getting healthy and trying to figure out how to be a contributing player, because you are on the hook for $28 million with this guy. This is not Adam Jones, who the Diamondbacks signed for $1 million or for $3 million for 1 year. Right. Adam Jones can have the worst year of his career, and the Diamondbacks don't have to care because they're paying him $3 million.
$3 million. Bye.
Yeah, See $3 million. That's $25 million less than Albert Pujols, and Adam Jones is a better player than Albert Pujols. So there has to be, better production than 18 home runs and 60 RBIs and a 250 average. Your on base percentage should be at least be in the 330s or 350s. Take the Votto route. Go up there looking for walks. All right, go up there with better pitch selection. I don't want to see strikeouts from Albert Pujols. I want to see base hits and walks. I don't care if you hit a ground ball and you can't run it out to first. That's just the way it is. You're an old man. Nobody expects a 39-year-old to be able to beat infield singles out. Okay, that's fair, unless you're Ichiro. I guess Ichiro probably still could. But as long as you're doing the little things like getting on base, driving in runs, hitting the ball to second base with a man on second, nobody out, right? Simple things like that, making the team better overall. That's what he has to focus on, not hitting 30 home runs, not going for it all and trying to break records and stuff like that. And I know his RBI, I know he actually can, I think, get 2,000 RBIs this season, if that makes sense. I might be off on that. It might be less than that. But so there are still records for him to break. But then that's another reason, Jared. Once he finishes this season and he breaks that RBI plateau, which I believe he has to break, he really has nothing else to break as far as records go that are realistic for him. I guess he could go for 700 home runs. I just don't think that happens. And I don't even think in the years that he signed with the Angels, he could do that based on his production the last couple of years.
So he's at home runs. He's at 633 right now. So
in 2 years, he could break Willie Mays' record. That's possibility.
Right. But not this year.
No,
there's no way that's happening this year.
He'd have to hit 35 home runs. That's it. Yeah, it's not.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not.
And what are his RBIs?
He's at 1,982. So that is so
he's going to break it.
He's going to break it.
And then, so that's what I'm talking about. Once he gets that, he has 3,000 hits, he has over 600 home runs, and he has 2,000 RBIs. What are you waiting for? What's his career average also, too?
His career average is 302.
302. So he's got to have a good year. So that's the thing. You keep your average above 300, 2,000 RBIs, 600 home runs, 3,000 hits, first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
first ballot. There's nothing you have to do. Maybe we hope the Angels win the World Series this year, because then that probably ends his career. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
You go on.
Obviously, we hope the Angels win the World Series.
Right.
But if for Albert Pujols' sake, maybe that helps him. I was hoping that Drew Brees, Tom Brady, we hope every year for the love of God, he leaves the NFL. But, for Albert Pujols, I know we were supposed to be talking about Mike Trout this whole time, but for Albert Pujols, he just needs to contribute the little things, drive in runs, get on base, and help the team out in the little things. You don't need to hit 40 home runs. Just do the things that will keep you in the lineup, play 100 games, do everything you can, and hit well against lefties. That's all I'm asking about Albert Pujols. You do that, I'm good with you this year. But next year is a little different story. I don't necessarily want Albert Pujols, but just because of the money. The money too. Buy him out, pay him $5 million a year every single year, like Bobby Bonilla, or something like that. Pay him $5 million for the next 12 years, and that's not ever going to affect the salary cap, something like that. Figure it out, and you move on. All right. And speaking of moving on, we do need to move on. We're coming back talking about the NFL. Obviously, the free agency period is kind of over now. There have been a couple more interesting signings that we definitely want to talk about, and a very interesting trade that I want to get Jared's take on. We will do that, and then later in the show, don't forget our March Madness kind of predictions, what you should look into since the games really start tomorrow. You got the first four, of course, today and yesterday, but as far as the real March Madness tournament, it starts tomorrow. So we'll give you kind of our upsets, who we think the Final Four will be, and teams to watch for that may be underrated. That's later. Coming up next, though, on the Cover 2 podcast is at the NFL. So we'll be right back on OC Rock Radio and Facebook Live.
Trade news to bring you Ryan Tannehill to the Titans. Can you give us some details there?
Yeah, and there's a lot to this. This was several weeks in the making here. Clearly, the Miami Dolphins going in a different direction at quarterback with this new regime, with Brian Flores at the helm. So Ryan Tannehill was not going to be back. It was an issue of finding him a home. So they found the Tennessee Titans. The deals are the Dolphins get a 4th rounder in 2020 and a 2019 7th. Meanwhile, the Titans get Ryan Tannehill and a 6th rounder. In addition, Tannehill agreed to redo his salary, took a big reduction. Of course, he is going to be the backup now. He gets a fully guaranteed $7 million and his upside of $12+ million. Clearly, there's been some durability issues with Marcus Mariota, now a security blanket in Ryan Tannehill.
You know what a lot of people have been saying, Jared, is that Kyler Murray saw Mike Trout's contract and was like...
Oh, there's a lot of people. I saw a couple memes that, like, Kyler Murray's face was, like, shocked, like, oh, did I make the right choice?
Yeah, no, it's...
I don't know.
For me, if I'm the Cardinals, you have to make it known that if he even thinks about going to the MLB, his contract is voided.
All right, on to the Raiders now. They've certainly been busy this offseason. Their latest addition, signing controversial linebacker Vontaze Burfict to a 1-year deal. Burfict has been suspended multiple times for dirty play. One of those suspensions for a dirty hit on new Raider Antonio Brown back in 2015. AB commented on the move on Twitter, saying, just talk to Vontaze, black and silver baby, hashtag Raider Nation, hashtag bully season.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast, everyone on Facebook Live and on OC Rock Radio. And like Nick mentioned before we ended the last segment, we are jumping to some NFL talk. And as the first tier of the free agency period has ended, we are now into the second tier. And really, even though the superstar players, if you will, the Le'Veon Bells, all the Antonio Brown trade, Odell Beckham Jr. trade, all those are done. So you won't see those types of crazy headlines anymore. But this second and third tier free agency is really where teams kind of build depth. And this is kind of where championship teams are made. There's still a lot of good veterans out there. Eric Berry and Ndamukong Suh, players that can still help contribute to a team. So there have been some still high-profile names that have been signed in the last few days. So we're going to jump right into that. And because I am a Cowboys fan, yes, we are going to start with my Cowboys. And even though they have not made a whole lot of noise so far in free agency, they did yesterday sign former Green Bay Packers wide receiver Randall Cobb. The Cowboys losing Cole Beasley, their slot receiver, to the Buffalo Bills last week. And so they did have a void at that slot receiver position. While they did resign Tavon Austin to just a 1-year deal, I feel like Tavon Austin is more of a punt return, kick return guy. While he is very fast, he doesn't necessarily have that route tree as far as a pure wide receiver. He's more of a gadget type of guy. So I actually really do like this Randall Cobb signing. I believe he only played in 6 or 7 games last year for the Packers because he was injured. And he does have some, injury prone to deal with. So the Cowboys do have to factor that in. But when healthy, I feel like he's very reliable. He's a former quarterback when he was in college. So he has that, that sense of where the quarterback's going to throw and where he needs to be. And he's a steady guy. I feel like he's another security blanket for Dak Prescott. So I really like this signing. I think they can still grab another receiver in the draft, but this kind of doesn't force the Cowboys to get a guy in the draft. Now they can step back and draft best available in a sense. So I do like this signing. Nick, what do you think about the Cowboys and Randall Cobb?
Oh, I like it. I mean, I've always thought Randall Cobb is an underrated wide receiver. Obviously, you have Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. That's going to help. But most receivers are pretty solid in their own right and sometimes can even make quarterbacks better. And so in some cases, Randall Cobb might have actually made Aaron Rodgers a bit better because of how good of a player he's been the last couple of years. But no, the Cowboys, they lose Cole Beasley. I actually think Randall Cobb is a better player, so I actually thought they signed addition a little bit older, right? But yeah, I think you guys fit in. I still think you guys should maybe think about drafting wide receiver, but you have Michael Gallup, you have Amari Cooper, who's young, and now you have Randall Cobb, and of course Tavon Austin. So that's a pretty good solid three wide receivers, 3.5 wide receivers right there. So you guys, like you said, are set in that case, and I thought this was a nice little signing. Only at $5 million, didn't hurt salary cap.
1 year deal.
And so next year you figured out whatever. Maybe, like I said, maybe you draft another guy. You have 3 young guys building up, but. Yeah, no, I really did like it, and with the addition of, I think Michael Gallup will now get more receptions. I think Amari Cooper, this will help out Amari Cooper. Look how good Jordy Nelson was, right? So, I do like this deal, and I did think it was. It came out of nowhere for me. I didn't.
It did, yeah. It was kind of a lot of times, the Cowboys when they bring a player in for a visit, it's almost like whether they have other visits lined up. If the Cowboys are really interested in the player, they will make that known. They are not shy about sitting here with a poker face and saying, "Oh, all right, we like you. We'll be in contact in a couple days." If they like you, they want to try and sign you before you get out the door. And I think that's what they did with Randall Cobb. Now they did bring in Eric Berry for a visit. He did leave the building without a contract. Doesn't mean that he still can't sign with the Cowboys, but I think that he wants to go to a few other places first. But if the Cowboys want a player, Jerry Jones will make it very known, and he will typically make it happen. So that is my Cowboys talk for the day. We're going to move on to our local Rams team, who have made a couple signings. One surprising, one maybe not so surprising. I'm going to start with the surprising choice, in my opinion. That is signing Blake Bortles as the backup quarterback, the former Jacksonville Jaguars first overall pick a few years back, who has been a bust. I think we can all agree that he's been a bust so far. Now you can say that the Jaguars did not surround Bortles with the right talent as far as weapons at receiver and offensive line, but Bortles still did not live up to the hype. So now he gets to sit behind Jared Goff. He gets to be with the quarterback guru in Sean McVay, and we will see what happens here. I think this is For Blake Bortles, I think this is a great situation because there aren't many expectations, right? And here's the thing. You come in, you play well in the preseason, you put some good tape out there. For some random reason, if Jared Goff gets injured, I feel like this offensive system is not necessarily complicated in the fact that I think Jared Goff can pick it up. And because of the weapons that that the Rams do have, I think they can make Blake Bortles look good.
That's what I was just saying.
So I think this is like a 1 or 2 year situation for Blake Bortles with the Rams. And if he plays it right, I think he can set himself up to look good and get a nice lucrative contract in the near future.
No, yeah, and Blake Bortles is a better backup than Sean Mannion. Okay, he's a fringe starting quarterback that's now a backup on a high-powered offense. For the Rams, this just is a safety net in case if Jared Goff gets hurt. If you're a Rams fan, you're not totally disappointed that Bortles is then your quarterback. And especially with an offensive coach, because I don't think he had an offensive coach in Jacksonville ever. You have an offensive coach with, like you said, the weapons he has, and Todd Gurley and Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks and Cooper Kupp, and a solid offensive line. Bortles is going to be looking to play. Bortles needs to hope that Jared Goff gets hurt, because if he plays well in this Rams offense, he's getting a big contract somewhere, and someone else is going to pay him probably something he doesn't deserve. But if you're a Rams fan, you should be excited that Blake Bortles is your backup, because having a good backup is a very underrated thing in the NFL. Not everybody can have Tom Brady or Drew Brees or Russell Wilson. Sometimes your quarterback isn't that good. Sometimes your quarterback gets hurt. And to have a backup come in is very, very solid. Coming from a fan that lost Carson Palmer twice, and our backups came in and ruined the season, that's having a good and solid backup is a big thing in the NFL, especially if your team is a Super Bowl contender.
I would pump the brakes on being excited, and that's only because the only image that we have of Blake Bortles is as a starting quarterback. So you're right. Maybe Blake Bortles from the beginning should have just been, a backup guy, a fringe guy that can come in and get you a couple starts. You know what? Maybe that's his career. If you can carve that out and make $8 million a year holding a clipboard, sign me up all day.
Ask Mark Sanchez,
right?
Probably down the street.
Sign me up all day for that. You come in if you need to on a couple quick starts. And you're kind of a journeyman in the NFL. Obviously, I'm sure Blake Bortles wants to be a starter, wants to be the franchise guy. But at this point in his career, he's proven that he doesn't deserve that opportunity yet. He now gets a second chance, which many quarterbacks do not. We'll see what happens with that. So because of the weapons and the pieces around Blake Bortles, I think this will catapult him and elevate him. And you're right. I think in the year or two, if he takes advantage of this opportunity, he'll get 18 or 20 million a year from some team that is desperate for a quarterback and has to take a risk.
If Nick Foles got $22 million a year for 4 years from the Jaguars, funny enough, Blake Bortles is younger. If he wins a Super Bowl with the Rams, or goes to the Super Bowl, or does the same thing Foles did, he's getting more money than that. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, this guy has a chance. And he already almost beat Tom Brady in a playoff game, although that was the Jaguars' defense, everybody. Okay, that was not Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles did everything he could to not win that game. He is a funny dude, though, and he's a good team guy, and he's good for social media. I know there's, social media accounts dedicated literally to Blake Bortles, and Barstool Sports are big fans of Blake Bortles as well. So, bringing that with Jared Goff should bring some funny memes and stuff like that with those two guys.
The other signing that was not as surprising for the Rams, they're bringing in another veteran, guy who's been around the block once or twice, an LA guy, former USC Trojan, and that would be Clay Matthews. They signed him to a 2-year deal. This one is interesting because, listen, this Rams team now, they lose LaMarcus Joyner. Right, you let go of Mark Barron, your middle linebacker. You replace LaMarcus Joyner with Eric Weddle, formerly of the Ravens. Right, very solid. Obviously, towards the end of his career, he's in his 30s, but a veteran, a leader in the locker room, a guy that can set up a defense and kind of be a coach on the field. Obviously, the Rams have Dante Fowler Jr. at one of those edge rusher spots. You have Aaron Donald in the middle. And Ndamukong Suh is still out there, but not sure that they want to bring him back. Yeah. On the opposite side is where Clay Matthews will more than likely play as that edge rusher who's rushing the passer and looking to get sacks. I think this is a great signing. I think this will kind of help rejuvenate his career. Not to say that he is completely dropping off, but in the last 2 years with the Green Bay Packers, because of injury and some other things as well, Clay Matthews has not been the Clay Matthews that we have come to know and see throughout his career. I believe his sack totals have been in the single digits in the last 2 years, and like I said, that's also because of injury, but I think his play has kind of diminished. But I think it's also been because the Packers' defense has been poor at best, and they have not surrounded Clay Matthews with other players on that line, so Clay Matthews is just getting double-teamed all day. Yeah. Well, guess what? In this Rams defense, you can't double-team Clay Matthews. You have to double-team Aaron Donald, and then you have Dante Fowler on one side and then Clay Matthews on the other side. So that is a daunting task for offensive lines and for offensive teams to have to go up against. So I love this signing, and I think Clay Matthews is going to flourish.
No, yeah, after losing Mark Barron 2 years, $12 million to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they do add a veteran for a young guy, and that's generally what happens if you're a smart team. If you lose, because here's the thing, the Rams defense is so good, there's no way you can keep everybody, right? There's just no way you can keep LaMarcus Joyner around, and Mark Barrett, and Aaron Donald, and Marcus Peters. It's not going to happen. But you cement them with cheaper veterans that aren't in their prime anymore, but are still very serviceable, solid players. So now looking at this Rams defense, like I said, last year it was Ndamukong Suh, it was LaMarcus Joyner. So right now they have, the defensive line is made up of Michael Brockers, Aaron Donald, and they do not have a nose tackle right now, so that is one thing. Your outside linebackers are Dante Fowler Jr. and Clay Matthews. Your inside linebackers are Samson Ibukam and Corey Littleton. Corey Littleton was a Pro Bowler on special teams, not necessarily a linebacker. And your DBs are Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, Eric Weddle, and John Johnson III. And let's throw in Nicole Roby-Coleman as well. The defense is still damn good, Jared. And this is very good for the Rams. If you're a Rams fan, this should excite you. They aren't necessarily, they're not getting any younger necessarily, but that's okay when you're a Super Bowl contender and you're kind of in win now mode, because you're eventually going to need to throw money at Jared Goff if you want to. You're eventually going to need to throw more money at a lot of these other players that are, maybe a Marcus Peters, maybe some other players and stuff like that, and you have a lot of money invested in Aaron Donald as well. So there's going to be times, like you're talking about with your Cowboys, where you eventually need to think about your own guys and your own guys inside. And so that's where you'll start to draft and stuff like that. And maybe you start this year by drafting, some players and looking toward the future. But for right now, you're a Super Bowl contender. You were in the Super Bowl last year. You only lost by 10. You really just all you had to do is make adjustments in that second half, and you win the Super Bowl. You're that close. Go get it this year, and this is very, very smart for the Rams here.
Yeah, no, listen, two signings, two guys who veteran experience. Clay Matthews has won a Super Bowl. Eric Weddle has never won a Super Bowl, and he is hungry to win.
Yeah.
Right? So they still have all their draft picks and if their first rounder included. But I like these signings not because of only the play on the field, but the fact that these guys bring the veteran leadership in the locker room. And like I said, Eric Weddle for sure. He's only playing to win a championship, right? He's not doing this for the money. He probably could have gotten more money from another team. He decided to come to the Rams because he knew that they were contenders, and he is hungry to win. And I'm sure Clay Matthews is as well, because they haven't won since 2010. So that's been 9 years. So two hungry veterans who can still play, and I think will only benefit this defense.
No, 100%. What do you think about Mark Barron going to the Steelers?
Listen, for the Steelers... It's interesting. Mark Barron, coming out of Alabama, was he was kind of a hybrid player, you know, and that was 5, 6, 7 years ago when the NFL wasn't necessarily the passing league that it is now. But Mark Barron was a hard-hitting safety, but not necessarily a guy that was a good cover safety. So he was expected to play a little bit more in the box, but he didn't have that build of a linebacker. So he was a tweener, and depending on the defensive scheme that he was put in, basically that was dependent on his play. So if teams wanted to play him at safety and expected him to go and cover receivers and tight ends, then you probably weren't going to get the best Mark Barron. You put him in the middle like the Rams did, and even though he's undersized, I think that benefited him because he's closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not running all over the field, and he is a willing tackler. He's a guy that even though he doesn't have that girth, he's willing to take on those blocks and go up against those big linemen and try to shed those guys and make the tackle. So I like the signing for the Steelers. I still think that they need to add pieces to that core because right now you had T.J. Watt on one side, you have Bud Dupree on the other side. Those are your two edge rushers. But in the middle, listen, when you think of the Steelers defense, you think of tough, hard-nosed, big, bruising linebackers. That's not necessarily what Mark Barron is. So I like the signing and the fact that it's only a 2-year deal. I think it'll be easy for the Steelers to get out of. But it's not like they have locked up their linebacking core in the middle and they can not focus on that. It's a good signing, but it doesn't get me stoked if I'm a Steelers.
No,
fan.
and the what sucks for the Steelers is that they lost their guy, Ryan Shazier. That was who they were building this defense around. You know what I'm saying? So right now, if Ryan Shazier never got hurt, you probably don't sign Mark Barron. You probably don't draft John Bostic. And you have a middle linebacker in Ryan Shazier. You have T.J. Watt. You have Bud Dupree. And that's a solid 3 linebackers right there. And you have a very good core. You have that old school Steelers thing. So right now, this is a very good supplement for that. You have Mark Barron, John Bostic, Vince Williams as your inside linebackers. That's pretty solid, knowing that you lost your star and you kind of had to adjust. And a lot of times you're not just going to go out there and find the next Ryan Shazier, right? It doesn't happen. And they also signed Anthony Chickillo in this offseason too. So solid 6 linebackers there for the Steelers. But again, they have a lot more problems than just their linebackers. So we can get into that when the season starts and we start talking about predictions, stuff like that. But Mark Barron is very solid signing in what's been a very weird offseason for the Steelers so far. All right, speaking of linebackers, Vontaze Burfict was released by the Cincinnati Bengals. The longtime middle linebacker, bad guy, kind of heelish kind of linebacker there. Has been suspended a bunch. Not the model player in the NFL. And so if you had to just take a random guess at where the not necessarily a model player would end up signing with, you probably have 2 or 3 teams you pick, but number 1 on that list is the Oakland Raiders. And so Vontaze Burfict is going to the Oakland Raiders. I don't know how much he signed for. I don't even know how long the deal is, but it just seemed like a fit. And now he's joining Antonio Brown, LaMarcus Joyner, and Trent Brown as guys they've signed this offseason. Jared, what's your take? Vontaze Burfict signing with the Raiders.
So there's one reason, in my opinion, why Burfict is now an Oakland Raider, and that's because his former defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, Paul Guenther, is now the defensive coordinator with Oakland. And it seemed like when Guenther was in Cincinnati, he was able to, I don't want to say control, because, it's not like he can literally control him, but he was able to get the best out of Vontaze Burfict as far as that middle linebacker role goes. Yeah. So we'll see if Burfict can kind of keep his head on straight and do the same thing with this defense. I will say that the Raiders definitely did need an upgrade at that spot. And just as a player, I'm not talking about him off the field or any of his other antics. As a football player, Vontaze Burfict is a very good middle linebacker. Now, obviously, he gets a little, over himself sometimes.
Just gotta hope he stays in the game.
Right. Yeah. Here's the thing. From an offensive standpoint, if you know that a certain player maybe has thin skin or you can get under his skin very easily, of course you're going to go after that, right? So if you're Paul Guenther and you're Vontaze Burfict and you're any other teammates on that Oakland Raiders roster, you have to go and keep them in check. You have to say, listen, man, guys are going to chirp at you. Guys are going to talk to you. They're going to try and get in your head. You can't let him get in your head. We will see if he can control himself. If he can, I think it's a great signing for Oakland because, like I said, they needed an upgrade at that spot. If he can't, it's going to be the same old story. He's going to play 5 or 6 games for Oakland. He's going to do something dumb. He's going to get himself suspended. And it's going to be a waste of a free agent signing for Oakland. So it's literally 50-50 on what you're going to get from him. And right now I don't know. But you're right. If there was any team that was going to sign a troubled player who's good on the field and bad off the field, it's the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, this defense is slowly rebuilding. They have pieces like Arden Key, Garyon Connolly, LaMarcus Joyner now to kind of build around. Then you throw in Burfict, who's a very, very solid veteran in there. And you're starting to kind of see this defense, redo itself after Khalil Mack was traded. And they have 3 first-round picks. So they could literally use all of those on defensive players if they wanted to. But so Raiders, they spend a lot of money, obviously, but their team isn't looking so bad anymore. Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams, J.J. Nelson at wide receiver now. The offensive line is looking solid. You got to figure out the quarterback issue. You don't know about running back, but they're not looking like the worst team in the NFL anymore, or at least one of the worst teams, because the Cardinals were the worst team. So just say I got
true statement.
Number 1 pick. All right, so and then let's move back to quarterbacks with a very, very strange thing that happened last week. The Dolphins traded Ryan Tannehill and a 6th-round pick to the Titans for a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick.
Surprising.
The Titans have Marcus Mariota as their quarterback, and Marcus Mariota is miles better than Ryan Tannehill. So I guess Ryan Tannehill's the backup, And to fix that, Ryan Fitzpatrick then signed a 2-year deal worth $11 million with the Dolphins to be their starter. Jared, what the hell is going on with both these teams? This trade made no sense to me either way, and I don't really know. I guess the Dolphins got a 4th-round pick from it, which is pretty solid for Ryan Tannehill, because I don't really think he was worth that. But what's going on with both these teams?
I'm not totally sure what Miami is doing right now. And
Do we ever know what Miami is doing?
If you're Brian Flores, the first-year head coach, former defensive coordinator of the Patriots, I don't know, man. I think you kind of have to be sitting there shaking your head. I will preface this by saying this. I feel like the Dolphins really wanted Teddy Bridgewater, and there were reports that, Bridgewater's from Florida, went to high school in Miami, and so I think they were heavily recruiting Bridgewater. He obviously chose to stay as the backup in New Orleans and hopefully be the successor to Drew Brees whenever he retires. New Orleans obviously has a better offensive weapons around them and just a better overall team. So I can't fault Teddy Bridgewater for wanting to stay in New Orleans from a football standpoint. So now that Miami struck out on that deal, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, well, let's just trade away our number 1 quarterback, right? And so that is where I'm a little confused as why are you trading away Tannehill when your backup was who? Trevor Fultz?
It was Jake Rudock.
Jake Rudock.
Yeah, I don't even know who he played for in college.
I'm not so sure.
Michigan.
Basically, what we're saying is the Miami Dolphins, before the signing of Ryan Fitzpatrick, did not have a starting quarterback on their roster. From the Titans' perspective, I'm actually okay with that because, listen, as good as a quarterback as Marcus Mariota is, and yes, I said good, not great, he is injury-prone throughout his career. And even in college, he has been injury-prone. So, Ryan Tannehill as a backup, maybe he is slotted just like Blake Bortles to be a better backup than he is a pro. Come in for a few games, get a couple spot starts, and I think that is better suited for Tannehill. Make him, if he plays well, maybe he can get himself a nice another lucrative contract in another year or two. So from the Titans' perspective, I can kind of understand this one a little bit more, but from the Dolphins, I really don't. And then just to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, listen, talk about a journeyman NFL quarterback. Yes, Fitzpatrick is a very smart quarterback. You know what you're going to get from him. But in saying that, yes, you'll get a couple touchdowns a game, but you're almost guaranteed to get a couple interceptions in a game as well. He's a gunslinger. I compare him to Brett Favre in the sense that he thinks he can make every single throw. He'll throw into double and triple coverage, and he makes a lot of interesting decisions. So for the Dolphins, I think they're in tanking mode, and I think they're going to get Tua. I know
you said that.
I know you've mentioned this, and I know you want to bring this up as well. So for the Dolphins, they're not going to come out and say that they're tanking, but signing Ryan Fitzpatrick is basically saying we're going to build our team this year. We're going to suck, and we're going to try to be the number 1 pick next year and grab Tua.
I mean, if Ryan Fitzpatrick signed with the Cardinals, I would be like, oh, wow, they're going to go after Tua instead of like Kyler.
If you know football, you know exactly now what Miami's doing. There's no hiding this as much as you want to come out and maybe say.
And it's not only you have Tua, Justin Herbert, who is a quarterback prospect this year, stayed at Oregon, Jake Fromm coming out of Georgia too. So that's 3 solid quarterbacks who may actually be better than the guys that are coming out right now as well. Further down the line, it's Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think you tank for 2 years for one guy at the hope you could eat. It's just doesn't happen that way. So, yes, they're going to try to go after the Alabama quarterback or Justin Herbert, whichever one they like. And it's easy for Ryan Fitzpatrick because he goes from Tampa Bay to Miami. So he's still living in Florida. He doesn't have to move super far. He probably could just drive his stuff somewhere to Miami because Tampa Bay is not too far from Miami. So, very interesting. Dolphins will suck next year, though. They really have nobody on there. They have nobody I can't even think of a very, very good player on that team.
I'll give you 2, and it's 2 safeties. T.J. McDonald. Formerly of the Rams.
Yeah, he definitely rejuvenated his career. Yeah,
I think he's a very good solid safety. He's a big guy, not necessarily a cover guy, but he's a good in the box safety. And Mika Fitzpatrick, their first round draft pick from last year. So I from a safety perspective, I think they have 2 good safeties. They have Xavier Howard at one corner, I believe. They had Kenny.
Laremy Tunsil, I guess. Was
they have Kenny Stills at wide receiver, who I like. They re-signed Devontae Parker. But you let Danny Amendola leave, kind of in that slot receiver. So it's like I do like their running back, Kenyon Drake out of Alabama. I've liked him all along, and his first
and no
couple
Frank
years,
Gore anymore
no Frank Gore.
to take his
so
spots away.
basically, what we're saying is they have probably 4 or 5 good pieces.
I think we
out
said
of
4 or 5 wins.
Oh no, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Well, that probably as well. 4 or 5 good pieces on a 53-man roster. So yes, the Miami Dolphins have a lot of work to do. Good luck, Brian Flores. You will not be in the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, it's gonna be tight. It's always interesting when you're a Patriots guy and you go and your team ends up sucking.
Especially
It's just
in the division, you got to play the Patriots twice.
It's tough.
Ugh.
Well, and the Jets have gotten better. The Bills, in my opinion, have gotten better and already were a 6-win team. Of course, they had the Patriots. They play the Browns next year. They play the Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Cowboys,
That's a win.
Eagles, Redskins, Chargers, Colts. I see like 3 or 4 wins on this in this year next year. So you're right. They will have a chance at number 1 quarterback. I think the Cardinals are getting better. Like I said, I think the Raiders are getting better. So the Dolphins are starting to look like that team that is one of the worst in the NFL. All right, so we got about 3 minutes to go here in this segment. Wanted to mention 2 more things, and I wanted to get your take on who the best free agent is still out there. A.J. McCarron signs the backup quarterback for the Texans, so Deshaun Watson has a very solid guy behind him finally. And Kareem Hunt suspended 8 games, so the Browns have to wait 8 games for Kareem Hunt to play for them, but he's not suspended for the entire season, and it means that this signing of Kareem Hunt late last season or early in this offseason will actually end up benefiting the Browns.
Listen, that was a very surprising suspension, in my opinion. And this is where I always get confused by the league, right? Because players can get suspended
Dude, it doesn't make any
these
sense.
crazy amount of games for marijuana use and substance abuse and all this stuff. And I hate to bring it up, but Ezekiel Elliott can get suspended 6 games without having a videotape of anything that he did.
Yeah.
And yet we have this player here who gets suspended 8 games when there is clear video evidence of him assaulting a woman. And he gets 2 more games than Ezekiel Elliott did. So I'm sorry for bringing up a former Cowboy, but that's just what I'm referencing right now.
That's a good example, though.
And this just goes back to the NFL and the fact that I don't understand, and I don't think many people understand how the NFL comes up with these suspensions and these punishments. It's almost like I really don't know. I'm kind of speechless right now because I really don't think that he should be in the league at all. The Browns took a chance on him, and that's obviously because their GM Dorsey was the one who signed Kareem Hunt when they were in when they were in Kansas City together. So they have a relationship and a history. But like I said, it's a win for Cleveland because when he comes back, you have a starting lineup of Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, and Kareem Hunt.
And Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson
that's
Jr.
That's pretty damn scary right there. Yeah. But what's also scary is the fact that this dude only got an 8-game suspension when he physically assaulted a woman. When he shouldn't be in the league, in my opinion. So it's dicey and I don't like it. But hey, it is what it is. And apparently this tells me that the NFL just does what they want.
Yeah.
There's no guidelines. They're going to come out and say they're doing their own investigation. And, they'll suspend one guy for 2 games. They'll suspend another guy 8 games for doing the same thing. I don't get it.
I think because I said this on Twitter too, I think that with this suspension, what the NFL did was said that he missed a number of games last year, including a lot of big playoff games. So we're going to suspend him for half a season this year, and then that calculates to a whole season, technically. And then he gets to play for the Browns, who are really entertaining and all that stuff. Because the suspension came down right after they traded for Odell Beckham Jr. And it was almost like the NFL was like, oh, well, we can't hurt the ratings. How great is it going to be in week 9 or week 10, whenever their bye is or whatever, when Kareem Hunt comes back? This is what the NFL is talking about. That's what I'm referencing. I'm not saying that. But they're saying Kareem Hunt's going to come back, and fantasy people are going to... Dude, it's BS, okay? And it doesn't make any sense how these suspensions work. You're right. Ezekiel Elliott literally did nothing according to the law and got suspended 6 games. Kareem Hunt, you could see a physical assault right? That would be a felony, and he gets suspended 8 games. Now, he did miss games last year. I said this on the podcast. I want him to miss an entire year at least to learn and know what he did and to be, in some ways, scare him, right? I don't think you should be Ray Rice. I don't think you should be just excommunicated from the league because he made one mistake. But at least the guy should not be playing for a playoff team next year, and he's going to be playing for a playoff team and one of the most entertaining teams in the league. So it's here, it's whatever. But we do need to move on. We'll talk about the free agents either at the end of this show or just next week when they get signed.
Right.
So we're going to move on. We're going to go to Do You Care? And then don't forget, later in the show, March Madness. We're going to be talking all March Madness, giving our upsets. And we definitely have some interesting upsets, too. And you won't believe one of the, or maybe even 2 of the ones I have so far. So we're moving on. Do You Care? Up next here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio and on Facebook Live.
Sources, meantime, also say that the Astros have reached agreement on a 6-year, $100 million contract with third baseman Alex Bregman. Bregman won't be eligible to be a free agent until his age 30 season. He helped the Astros win a World Series in 2017 and was an All-Star in 2018, batting .286 with 31 homers and 103 RBIs.
MLB in 2020 is making a 3-batter minimum for pitchers and expanding rosters to 26 players.
Wait, what was that again?
Oh, sorry. The MLB is making, when relievers come in, or I think it's all pitchers, a 3-batter minimum. So no more lefty
one
against
one.
lefty, one pitch done, you have to face 3 guys.
Okay. So let's just say the MLB is making like drastic changes.
Making some rule changes, yeah.
Looking for Russell. Instead, it's Hollis Jefferson. Hollis Jefferson will take it. His layup is good! Hollis Jefferson puts it down, and Brooklyn in front. No timeouts remaining for Sacramento. 0.8 of a second left. The heave. That's it! The comeback completed! What a win for Brooklyn! 123. 121 the final.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast on Facebook Live, on OC Rock Radio, and on YouTube. Once again, I am Nick Nina.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared, do you know what time it is right now?
What time is it, Nick?
It's time for Do You Care? It's a favorite game here on the podcast.
Don't blow out the mic.
No, I didn't blow out the mic. No, I moved away. Favorite game here on the podcast. We ask each other rapid fire questions. We kind of answer some stuff that we forgot to answer or couldn't answer in our main segments. So we gave little tidbits. Some of it, we're taking shots at some people. Some of it is just very interesting news that we want you guys to know. But, without further ado, why not we just start the segment? Because I'm just wasting time here. Jared, you're going to get the first question. Do you care that the Brooklyn Nets, led by former Laker D'Angelo Russell, came back from 28 points last night to beat the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily care about the Nets making a comeback like that. I will say that I'm pleasantly surprised that the Nets are not only a playoff team, but they look like a legitimate NBA franchise.
Yeah, that's
after
true, yeah.
basically tanking for the first part of their inaugural season and the first probably 2 or 3 years after that. I remember that crazy trade where they got Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce at the end of their careers and tried to basically put butts in their seats and sell tickets. That didn't work. So finally this Nets organization has pieces to build around and looks like a legit contender in the East. And that a lot has to do with D'Angelo Russell, the former first overall pick of the LA Lakers. So the Lakers right now are in shambles, and this is just another piece that the Lakers let slip away, and D'Angelo Russell is proving why he deserved to be that first pick. Now, I will say, in the how long was he with the Lakers? 1.5 years, or was it a full 2
Might have
years?
been a little longer. I don't remember exactly.
But he did not show these type of flashes. He's always been a very willing passer, and his offense has been up and down. But this year, first-time All-Star, proving to be a go-to scorer and a legit star. So good for him that he's finally been able to, get his career on track. Being that first, overall pick, a lot of expectations come with that, and he's proving that he was deserving of that. So good for him. But yeah, listen, you were down 25 to the Kings in the first place. That probably shouldn't have happened anyway.
That's a good point.
But the fact that they showed some resiliency and they were able to come back is a good thing for this team. So like I said, I believe the Nets are currently in 7th right now. And the way they're playing...
They're in 7th, but I don't really think they have a chance to miss the playoffs.
No, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the way they're playing right now, I wouldn't necessarily want to play them in the first round
hot,
if I was an East team. So good luck to whoever does. Nick, do you care that the Tampa Bay Lightning have already won the Eastern Conference?
No, because both the teams I follow in hockey are out of it and are fighting for top 5 picks and even the number 1 pick. But this is just very interesting. The Lightning not only have won the Eastern Conference already, they're 19 points ahead of every other NHL team. Every other NHL team. The next best two teams are the Brooklyn Bruins, the Boston Bruins, and the Calgary Flames, who have 97 points. The Lightning have 116. So I don't know. I didn't do enough research to know if they're on pace for a record maybe for a season of points. But this is just in a way. We'll do a segment or something on the NHL playoffs this year, on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Excuse me. The Lightning need to win the Stanley Cup this year because they are clearly the best team. They're the most impressive. 19 wins equates to about 9.5 games up on everybody else. Wow. So think about the Warriors when they went like 72 and whatever. That's what Tampa Bay's doing. So you need to win a championship, and I would just they'd be extremely disappointing. And they've also been close to a championship the last couple of years. It's kind of their time. Nashville, those are the kind of teams that need to be in the Stanley Cup Finals. I want to see those teams win. Jared, do you care that Johnny Manziel has signed with the Memphis AAF team?
No, I don't care. I'm 0 for 2 on these so far as caring. No, I don't. I mean, listen, Johnny Manziel, you signed with the Canadian Football League after being kicked out of the NFL, and you say you're changing your life and you're doing all this stuff, and then you violate a specific rule in your contract, and the CFL kicks you out. Now, the CFL did not explain what that violation was, but with Johnny Manziel's track record and his history, he doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt in many situations. Fortunately for him, the AAF is now here, and there's just another opportunity for him to play. So the San Antonio, I forget their nickname, but
no idea.
The San Antonio team in the AAF, because they were first in the waiver wire, had an opportunity to take Johnny Manziel, and they passed. They didn't want to be part of him. The Memphis Express, led by head coach Mike Singletary, former All-Pro and Hall of Fame linebacker for the Chicago Bears,
too, yeah.
He and this Memphis Express team decided to take a chance on him. I think more so because their 2 starting quarterbacks in Christian Hackenberg and Zach Mettenberg are both currently injured and not really sure how long they're going to be out. But basically, the Memphis Express were having to play with third-string quarterback Brandon Silvers, and I've never heard of him before.
No, yeah.
So, they're taking a flyer on Johnny Manziel, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll put, butts in seats for the AAF, but, I'm not necessarily excited because we haven't necessarily seen a good Johnny Manziel quarterback in a very long time, since his college days at Texas A&M. Nick, do you care that TJ Dillashaw is suspended and is dropping his bantamweight belt?
Yes, because TJ Dillashaw was one of the best champions and one of the best fighters in the UFC, and maybe could be considered the best bantamweight of all time. And this is fairly breaking news today, so there's not a lot that we know, but he was suspended by the New York State Athletic Commission, and I believe he actually voluntarily dropped his bantamweight belt because of a failed drug test. So, unfortunately, we have a John Jones type of situation, and the UFC loses their bantamweight champion, and Dillashaw is also coming off a loss to Henry Cejudo, which was a fight, I believe, for the featherweight championship, and he got wrecked in about 40 seconds in that fight. So, not a very good couple weeks, not a very good couple months for TJ Dillashaw, and then unfortunately he now has to relinquish his title, and we'll see how long he ends up getting suspended for this. But Also, being suspended by the New York State Athletic Commission doesn't necessarily mean you can't fight. I mean, John Jones, I believe, is actually suspended or was suspended in Las Vegas, even though he had come back to fighting. So there's certain places he can't fight. So not totally out of the question that TJ Dillashaw can still fight, but he does relinquish the championship as a good guy, just saying that, no, I don't deserve to have the championship anymore. But that definitely does shift some things in the lower divisions of the UFC, for sure. Jarrett, last question for you. Do you care that in 2020, the MLB is making it a 3-batter minimum for pitchers and expanding rosters to 26? I know I was supposed to explain that, but I accidentally did.
It's okay. Yeah, I do care. This is the one I do care about. And as someone who, does watch baseball, maybe not every single day, but I do enjoy watching, I like this. I think this will speed up the game a little bit. And in years past, obviously, managers could bring in a different pitcher for every single batter, right? So you could have a lefty going up against a righty, and then immediately put in a righty going up against a left-hander. I mean, it just kind of slowed down the game a little bit, and I think some of the momentum was lost. So now with a minimum of 3 hitters that a pitcher must face, I think, you know what, even for a pitcher as well, listen, obviously you're trying to get matchups, and from a history standpoint, if a right-handed pitcher has not done well against a righty or lefty, you're going to want to put the best matchups out there. But I mean, if I'm a pitcher, regardless of how well or poorly I'm doing, I want to have the confidence to say, I don't care if it's a left-hander or a right-hander. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to strike this guy out, right? So I think this, just like I said, I think it speeds the game up a little bit. Another interesting point that I quickly want to bring up is that the bargaining over distribution of revenue is also something that's going to be brought up. In these there's going to be some earlier negotiations. These negotiations were thought to not be taking place until the CBA expires in 2021, but I guess these negotiations are going to get started a little bit earlier. So just like we saw, with a lot of teams this year not willing to spend a lot of money on players that are 30 and older, kind of aging players, the distribution of money as far as giving more money to younger players, I think, is going to change as well. So if you're a younger player and you prove yourself in the first couple of years, there's a better chance of you getting more money early on. So a lot of changes coming with baseball, not necessarily this year, but in 2020 and in 2021. Nick, do you care? Last question for you, and we're sticking with baseball. Alex Bregman of the Astros has signed a 6-year, $100 million extension.
Yes, I do care about this. This is a nice little bow tie to kind of end our baseball segments of the day. Obviously, we talked about the largest contract in not only MLB history, but sports history. You have, the next day, or literally the same day, actually, Alex Bregman, who's another young budding star and a fan favorite for the Houston Astros, signed a 6-year, $100 million deal. Now, you're probably wondering, Bregman's a great player. He's an all-star. He was actually in the MVP race. He was top 5 in MVP voting last year. Why would he only get half of what Mike Trout just got? I believe his contract's about $16 million per year. You can do the math, or 100 divided by 6. And the reason is because what this deal does for Bregman's is it takes away not only this year's contract, but 3 years of arbitration, and then it takes care of his first 2 years in free agency. And what that means, again, is that when you're a baseball player, it takes you 6 years to normally get a big contract and to become a free agent. In the NBA, it's 4 or 5. The NFL, it's 4 or 5. Hockey, I believe, is 3. And so it's a long time. And that's not even when you sign your contract from the draft. Let's say you're 18, you get drafted, and you don't come up to the MLB until you're 22. That's when your clock starts. So when you're 28, you're a free agent. So what Alex Bregman did here was he wasn't going to get essentially paid anything this year, next year, and 2 years after that.
Wow.
Now he's getting paid about $16-17 million. And then the first 2 years of his free agency, he's also getting paid that amount. Now, there's no discussions about exactly what the deal is. Maybe he's getting paid more those 2 years of free agency to complement for the fact that he wouldn't be getting paid now anyways. But this is a very smart move, and it keeps together that great Houston core of Carlos Correa, George Springer, Jose Altuve, and Alex Bregman. So good for the Astros. They keep their core players there, and they don't sign Bregman to some giant contract. I mean, Mike Trout did the same thing, but his contract is about $34 million this year. And that, when we go back to the Mike Trout deal, he's still getting paid $33.5 million these next 2 years. That's actually part of his deal that he signed as well. So once his deal was up, then it goes into 10 years, $36 million a year. So very interesting stuff there. And just want to explain a little bit why a star would sign for that little money, because they would have been getting paid like $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $6 million, something like that over these next couple of years. All right, we need to move on. We're going to break. Coming up next, March Madness talk. Obviously, we have the last 2 games of the first 4 today, Wednesday, and then the big games start. I believe it's 16 games tomorrow, Thursday.
Let's go.
16 games Friday.
Let's go.
8 games Saturday and 8 games Sunday. So it's going to be very interesting. We are going to mainly discuss, at least as far as our upsets go, the first 2 or the first 4 days. Once we get to the Sweet 16, we will discuss. That will be for next podcast. We'll readjust what we talked about this one, because we more than likely will be wrong by about at least 1 or 2 teams. And we'll see, unless one of us has an unbelievable bracket and somehow got Sweet 16 correct, which would be news in itself, and news for most other outlets that talk about sports. So we need to go to break, though. We're live here on the Cover 2 podcast at OC Rock Radio and Facebook Live.
Great team we witnessed in this tournament tonight. The Nova Nation has another national championship.
You get the sense that K-State has been out-kicking its coverage all season long, to the credit of Bruce Weber and company, but shorthanded again, traveling out west to play Cal Irvine. I smell an upset. UC Irvine prevails. Kansas State will have to settle for its regular season Big 12 championship.
And did you see Auburn against Tennessee in that SEC championship game?
I did not.
Auburn was hitting threes in the second half like they were layups.
They're good.
It was insane. I mean, Tennessee got blown out of the gym. It was crazy.
And Tennessee, is one of those teams.
Oh no,
they've been ranked.
Legit.
They've been ranked in the top 10 the whole season.
Oh no, Tennessee is legit, and they literally got whooped. It was scary, man.
1-point game, Little the rebound. Carolina has 2 timeouts. Kobe White with 4, 3, shot at the horn, rimmed out, tap follow, Duke wins. $74-73.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you for listening, everyone. This is our final segment of the day. We're live on OC Rock Radio and Facebook Live, so thank you once again. And we're jumping into March Madness, people. The first 4 officially started yesterday with 2 games. There are 2 more games today. And then tomorrow it gets underway with, I believe Nick was saying, 16 games tomorrow and 16 games on Friday. So a flurry of college basketball coming at you. I've done 2 brackets already, and I quickly tried to do a third before this one, just kind of a funny random bracket. I know Nick has done, I'm sure, a couple.
Yeah.
So, like we mentioned, we want to talk about the first and the second round specifically, and we'll get into the Sweet 16 and the later matchups later on. But let's jump right into it, man. I want to hear some of your upsets, because, like I said,
let's just exactly. We should get into it.
Last year, I feel like there were so many crazy upsets that many people did not predict. Obviously, Virginia, the first ever number 1 seed to lose in the history of March Madness tournament. So, it can happen again this year. Do you have any number 1 seeds being upset, or what? Give me some of your top upsets.
Oh, no, not in the first round. Because here's the thing, Duke ain't getting upset. North Carolina ain't getting upset. Maybe Gonzaga because they lost to St. Mary's, but I feel like that will be a reason why they wouldn't lose.
Right.
And Virginia, there's no way they're getting upset.
I mean,
so,
but they lost too.
They play a slow style, so it could happen.
Right.
But it's just like with what happened last year, it's almost like they're gonna overdo that first game so that they make sure and win.
Yeah.
Then they're gonna have a pretty tough matchup their next game too, no matter who they play. I believe it's Oklahoma or Ole Miss. So they really no one put too much focus into it, but. Yeah, okay, so I'll get to it. So I only did my upsets for the first 2 rounds, and then I can kind of look them up if I have any others there later. So first round, I have 4 upsets. 2 of them not kind of crazy, and 2 of them a little bit crazy. The ones that aren't so crazy, St. Mary's over Villanova. St. Mary's obviously beating Gonzaga. I don't even believe they would have been in the tournament if they hadn't won that game. So I think they'll take that and they'll be able to win at least one game in this tournament. And so I got them beating Villanova. And then, of course, I have to go with my UC Irvine Anteaters. And they're actually a very popular, maybe even the most popular upset team against Kansas State. Kansas State just lost their best player right before this game, too, Dean Wade, who's likely not going to play in the rest of the tournament and for sure won't play in this game. So Kansas State, who's they're another slower team, more defensive team. UCI is one of the best defensive teams in the entire tournament, no joke. And they also can load it up offensively. They scored over 100 points in games this season. Now, that's against subpar opponents, and they haven't really faced big opponents, and when they did, they didn't fare well. But this UCI team is legit. They have a great coach in Russell Turner, so I got them winning at least their first round against Kansas State. And then here are my crazy ones, Jared. I got Old Dominion over Purdue.
Oh, boy.
And I got Northeastern upsetting Kansas. That's my big one. I think Kansas is thrown off a little bit this year. Northeastern can shoot the 3. I looked them up for like a minute. I'm not saying I did a lot of research. But sometimes when you're doing these brackets, you just got to pick some craziness. And I'm going to go Kansas gets upset this year. That's the big one. Everyone goes, how the hell did that happen?
Really?
You know?
All right. That's
just my first round.
Listen, you know what? I'm not totally surprised by UCI. I actually am taking UCI in this first round as well. The Kansas one, even though from a seeding standpoint, many people are going to say really like it's Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas didn't
not that good.
Like, I mean, listen, I feel like Duke just overshadowed everyone as far as the spotlight this year because they have Zion Williams, they have the top 3 high school recruits, and they literally were just so everyone just wanted to hear about Duke this year, right?
Yeah.
So every other team, including North Carolina, including Virginia, including Kentucky, including Tennessee, all these other teams that were very good, everyone took a back seat. And especially for Kansas, they just, whether they didn't get the recruits that they normally get, head coach Bill Self, this team just wasn't the kind of title-tending Kansas team that many of us have come to expect. They're still number 4 seed, which is a very good seed. But even though I picked Kansas to win, I'm not totally surprised by that.
That's
because
exactly.
They just haven't had that
my
same
thinking
feel.
is exactly like what you're talking about right now. With if I'm going to go with an upset of a team that's popular and people would never pick, I'm going to go Northeastern because Northeastern is a team that like rarely has ever been in. And I think that's another reason. A team that nobody respects in the least bit, just one of the schools in Boston, and they go out and they shock the world and they win down. It's also tough because I think they have to come all the way to they have to come kind of near the West Coast. They have to definitely come west, so it's a long flight. But I just have a feeling it's not Kansas's year this year. And I'd look up who they'd play next if they won. I don't know if I can just pull it up right now, but it's just I just feel like it's not Kansas's year. And if I'm going to pick a crazy upset, I'm going to go with that one. I don't think the UCI one is as crazy of an upset. I know Kansas State won the regular season title for the Big 12, but they're missing the best player. And I just don't think Kansas State's a world beater and is going to be, I think they could definitely lose. So that's my one. And so Kansas, here's the thing. Kansas plays Auburn that next game. They're for sure losing to Auburn. So that's why it's like whatever. Northeastern wins, and then they get their butt whooped by Auburn next game. But it's just whatever.
Auburn is a legit team, by the way, for anyone that saw the SEC championship is between them and Tennessee. Auburn, I mean, now they're not going to shoot the 3 like they did in that
Bruce
game.
Pearl is their coach.
Yeah.
Too. Great coach.
Former Tennessee coach. I'm sure he had a little extra juice going into that one. I like those upsets. I think they're, not as crazy as many people thought. But you know what? Like I said, because of last year's upsets, I really, and especially the number 1 Virginia team losing, I feel like this year it's like, it's not, if there is an upset, it's not going to be as like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's almost like you got overload with Loyola Chicago getting to the Final Four.
Right.
It's like, it's crazy.
Come on, that's not going to happen again. Yeah. So, all right, I'll give you a few of my upsets. I don't know if any of mine are as crazy.
You going first round with this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go first round. I don't know if any of mine are as crazy as what Nick had. But I've got Murray State over Marquette.
Okay, yeah, that's a battle of 2 star players in that game.
It is,
too,
right.
yeah.
And Murray State with Morant, who is probably going to be the 3rd overall pick in the draft after Zion Williams and R.J. Barrett. I mean, I really like this kid. And Marquette's a very good team, but I feel like this Morant kid is, ever since I saw him dunk over that one guy earlier in the year, and listen, this guy can shoot, he can handle, he can basically do everything. He's, I kind of want to say a one-man show, no disrespect to anyone else on Murray State.
No, but
he is basically the reason why this Murray State team is in the tournament as a number 12 seed. So, Murray State, I have them beating number 5 Marquette. That is one of my upsets. Another upset, where is it here? Sorry, I had it, and I did. Oh, here we go. I have either Arizona State or St. John's upsetting number 6 Buffalo.
Okay.
Buffalo, I don't know. I feel like, especially if St. John's gets in, I think I'll have even more confidence in that one. But either way, Arizona State or St. John's, I think they trump and beat number 6 Buffalo. So that's another one. And then I've got Iowa beating Cincinnati.
Okay.
Cincinnati just beat Houston in their tournament game, and Cincinnati looked really good in that game. Cincinnati lost both of their games in the regular season to Houston, so that was kind of a revenge game for them. But I like Iowa. I like Iowa and Iowa State. I picked both those teams to advance in the second round.
Too.
So that's another sleeper for me. And then, of course, I also have UCI as well beating Kansas State. So those, I guess, would be my 4, if you want to call them major upsets. But like I said, I don't feel like this year they're really crazy out of the box.
Yeah, I also had I thought Temple was going to win the first 4 game yesterday on Tuesday, and I had them beating Maryland. But then since Belmont won, I actually have now Maryland winning that game.
Okay.
I don't have as much confidence. I know they won 1 game against a subpar opponent, but Maryland's a good ACC team. I don't think they lose to a team. I have them losing the next round to LSU, but I do not. I had that original one, and I just switched that this morning when I saw that Belmont had won, because I hadn't even seen the game.
Okay.
But yeah, so, I thought about that ASU St. John's one. Number 1, I don't know how good St. John's is, and number 2, I watched ASU, and they just didn't win a lot of big games. Like, I know they beat Washington, but, like, they lost to UCLA, and they lost to other teams they should have lost to. I just feel like it's not the Pac-12's year. I have most of them getting eliminated pretty quickly. I don't think I have anybody in the Sweet 16 from the Pac-12, so I don't think it's their year. So even if ASU wins, I do have actually Buffalo winning that game. All right, let's go to the second round. Jay, why don't you do your second round first, since I did the first round first.
All right, so my second round
upsets.
Upsets here. I don't have many.
You have any big seeds going down at least?
I have number 6 Iowa State beating Houston.
Okay.
So that's a 6 beating a 3. I have Auburn beating Kansas. So in the first round, I have Kansas moving on. But I just, the way that Auburn played against Tennessee, they like, I'm on the Auburn's bandwagon, man. Yeah. If they can shoot remotely close to the way that they did against Tennessee, their attacking style, they like to get up and down. Like, literally, and it just plays into today's basketball, but they like to get out and run, and they have 2 guys that run to each wing, and they're jacking up threes, man. So I really like Auburn over Kansas. That's probably my biggest upset in the second round. I have Villanova beating Purdue. I know you have Villanova losing to St. Mary's in the first round.
I do have Purdue losing in the first round to Old Dominion.
Yeah.
So that's not.
So I have Villanova. So that's a 6 beating a 3. That would be my only other actual upset. Everyone else, I've got the favorites.
Who do you have, real quick, in the first round? Who do you have win the Wisconsin-Oregon game?
I have Wisconsin, and that one. So that one was so I watched Oregon, and did they win the Pac-12?
They won Pac-12. That's the only reason they got in. Yeah,
right. And I, for a minute, I was like, they won the Pac-12. They got some momentum going in, but I just, at the end of the day, they didn't seem to. I don't have a lot of confidence in Oregon, let's put it that way. They didn't blow me out of the water with the way they played. Yeah. Yes, they won in a Pac-12 conference that to me is very weak. So I don't look at them as saying, oh, they won the Pac-12, they're going to do a whole lot. I just so for that reason, because the Pac-12 was definitely not as competitive as the ACC or even the SEC this year, I'm not really high on Oregon.
Yeah, no, like I said, I don't have any of these teams in the Pac-12 getting any further than the second round. So yeah, it's just not a good year. I'm glad they got 3 teams in. I mean, we'll see if ASU gets in.
Right. So it's really Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, the ASU has to earn their way in.
Exactly.
So, like I said, I don't have any of them going super far. All right. So mine, I don't have as many either. And some of mine have to do with certain seedings and stuff like that. I'll start. So I picked Old Dominion, and they actually get a contest with St. Mary's, so it's 11 versus 14. So I got Old Dominion beat them again and get to the Sweet 16.
Really?
I hoped that wouldn't happen, but it did, and so I'm gonna like whatever. I'll just go with a 14 seed over 11 seed. There's no basis to it. St. Mary's barely got in the tournament. I think they get the one win, and then I think they get kind of upset by some other team like they did to everybody else. I also this is one this is a very interesting one. This might have some bias to it. I do have UCI actually beating Wisconsin as well.
Woo!
Wisconsin.
You're on the UCI.
The only reason I say that is because Wisconsin has a very similar team to Kansas State and doesn't have like a bona fide star on their team. So I think UCI could defend them well and be able just to beat them by like 2 or 4 points. So again, in a perfect world, if I wasn't a UCI fan, I'd probably have them winning one round and then nothing. But because I actually watch their games and I see them, the bias will go towards UCI and have them win another game. And then I have Nevada beating with Michigan.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, here's the interesting thing about Michigan. Michigan, I had them losing in the Sweet 16 originally. And I moved it back to Nevada because I like Nevada. And I'll explain something about Nevada in a second. Michigan, they started the season 17-0, and I found this out just based on doing research from the Tournament Challenge website. They haven't won 3 games in a row since then. And in a tournament, you got to win, like 6? So I got them Nevada, they're a team that a lot of people, if you're thinking, you're like, they lost to San Diego State in their own tournament. San Diego State didn't even make the tournament. Well, they were missing their best player. And they have 2 very good twin brothers. They have a great coach. They were in it last year. They got deep. I think they can beat a Michigan team that has faltered and has kind of not played well and lost to Michigan State 3 times this year. I just think they're not right in the mind, and they're a 2 seed that's playing like a 4 or 5 seed. And I think Nevada is a 7 seed who's actually better than a 7 seed. I think they'll end up beating Michigan.
A couple things that I want to piggyback off of what you said, going in kind of reverse order, starting with Michigan. I don't know if you saw the actual selection Sunday, and you know how every once in a while they're kind of pan to a team and like see the team's reaction and the crowd behind them and everything. Michigan had literally probably like 30 or 45 minutes just lost to Michigan State.
Oh, that's
like
brutal.
They were still in their uniforms.
That's brutal.
And they're sitting, and they're all sitting together. And so you see them get selected, and it's like they start clapping, but they're just like, you can just tell, like the coach had to literally tell the kids to like stand up.
Yeah.
It like they were just not motivated.
That's what I'm talking about, bro.
Listen, you just came off of a loss to a rival in the Big Ten championship game. So I understand them not like in the moment being excited, but it's like they just their body language it wasn't right, man. So even though I have Michigan moving on, I had Michigan beating Nevada. I'm not like confident in Michigan. Earlier in the year, Michigan looked like the number 1 team in the country. And for some reason, it seems like the wheels have started to fall off a little bit, and they don't seem to have that same mojo that they had earlier. Going back to Florida and Nevada, kind of backtracking a little bit, I like Nevada because I really don't like Florida. Florida, number 1, is 19-15 on the year. They're 2-9 against top 25 ranked
They have
opponents.
some weird BS wins.
They have some weird
really
wins, and they only score 68 points a game. I have a bad. Every time I say Florida, I just get like this bad taste in my mouth. So I don't like Florida at all in that matchup. So I agree with you. I think Nevada moves on, but when it comes to that Nevada-Michigan matchup in the second round, I give it to Michigan because I think they just had better players. But like I said, I'm not sold on that one at all. And then this is just like I kind of wish type of thing. I have UCI moving on to the second round. I have them losing to Wisconsin. They will be playing. I forget where they're going to be playing.
Playing San Jose.
You're right, San Jose. it would have been super cool
to have them
if
at Honda
UCI
Center.
would have had them at Honda Center.
I know. Come
Literally
on, NCAA.
across the street.
I
Like,
also,
how cool would it have been?
I also was hoping that Duke would be playing at the Honda Center.
So
they're not either.
Fun fact: shout out to my amazing girlfriend who got us basically like floor seats for the. I think we're going to the Elite. We're going March 30th.
Wow.
We're going Saturday.
Oh, that's so
she
cool.
called me a couple days ago and was like, "Hey, what do you do March 30th?" And like that's actually one of my best friend's birthdays.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't know. It's our friend Sean's birthday, but she's like, oh well, I'm about to buy his tickets to the Elite Eight game, so we don't have any plans. And
Well,
I'm
so
like,
what is that?
All right. So that Michigan could be in there.
Michigan,
That's
Gonzaga, yeah.
Florida State. So
wow.
So I'm stoked. So I will be going to Honda Center
cool.
for an Elite Eight
That
matchup.
is awesome.
So I'm excited, super excited about that. Shout out to
You're not
Chrissy.
going to like the matchup
Thanks
I
for
have
those tickets.
for that game.
Oh,
if you're there.
okay.
But,
I need a good matchup. I need a really good matchup.
Okay, so that's a very cool fact. That should be really, really fun. Yeah, but you're right, man. If UCI would have been potentially in that,
how awesome
Sweet
could that
16.
have been to play at home?
It
game
is
for
cool
them?
they're playing in San Jose, but they will get some fans
for sure.
over there.
Yeah,
and compared, Kansas State probably will bring some people. So they have a good following too. But yeah, that's gonna be very interesting. So moving on. Do you? I funny enough, for bracket purposes, I have UCI beating Virginia. I do not think that's gonna happen, but just one of my brackets, I do have UCI beating Virginia because I'm like, Virginia. If they lost to a 16 seed, they can lose to UCI.
See, listen,
but it's not going to happen.
I haven't done it yet. I'm
it's not
going to. You have to like.
You're switching cities too. It's not. It's
I
tough.
make like 5 brackets. You have to have one of them where it's just
it's
crazy.
gonna be stupid.
It's just
it's
like
gonna be stupid.
it's gonna be dumb.
Yeah.
It's gonna be dumb. And you're gonna have like a couple random wins in there, and you're gonna say, "Damn it! I wish I would have put that in my extra bracket that I care about." But you got to do one of those. So I understand.
No, exactly. And then I do actually, and we'll get to our Final Four picks too. I do have Nevada actually getting all the way to the Final Four. So
really?
I have them
The Final Four?
upsetting Texas Tech and Florida State. Relatively, Texas Tech is a great team. Florida State's a great team, but they're not Virginia. I think once they beat Michigan, it's either easier teams.
Wow.
And so I do have them, and they are also playing in the Western bracket. So they're not traveling far from their own city. They actually maybe could even go home and practice and then come back and play in Anaheim. Because they're only from Reno. So they actually have almost a home field advantage, one of the few home field advantages in that side of the bracket. I think the other one would be like ASU if they got there. But that's really it. So Nevada could be kind of the home team, but I have, in my Final Four, I'd have Nevada and Florida. Well, actually, I would have, let's see, for your matchup, I'd have Nevada versus Texas Tech and Gonzaga versus Florida State. Those would be my 2 matchups you'd be seeing, or the Elite Eight, or whatever it is.
In the Elite Eight, okay.
Florida State, Nevada. Excuse me. That's who it is. So
Florida State, Nevada.
Crazy, weird matchup.
See, I agree. I have Florida State, but they're playing against Michigan. I like Florida State because of their length. I feel like every year,
I do too.
Florida State gets these crazy, 7-foot guys that have a 10-foot wingspan. I don't know where they get them from. It's not that they're necessarily the best basketball athletes, but when you want to talk about just pure size and from a defensive standpoint, you're not getting rebounds on these guys, and you're not going to be able to shoot over them. So from that standpoint alone, I mean, they give up. Let's look at their opponent's points per game. It's 67 as compared to 58 against Michigan. But when it comes to block shots, defensive rebounds, I feel like they're very, very hard to score against. And when it comes to a tournament game where the game could potentially slow down a little bit because teams get a little timid and you're a little scared, you don't want to make a mistake on a big stage, I think that favors Florida State. So I have them in the Elite Eight as well, and then I have Michigan beating them.
Yeah,
but
we're close. Besides Nevada being Michigan there, I do like Florida State a lot. We both have them, I guess, beating Gonzaga too, which I think will happen. I think Gonzaga's a great team, but you can't lose your conference championship to a random team in a Las Vegas arena that has no fans in it. It just can't happen if you're going to win the national championship. So all right, my total Final Four is Nevada, Duke, UNC, and Tennessee. So once you get Nevada out of there,
wow, that's great for Duke.
No, I know Nevada's going to beat the hell out of Nevada too. And that
I think Duke is going to beat Nevada.
I think because Duke would play Nevada, and that's just that matchup is.
You said Nevada is going to beat Nevada, and I said, how's that work? Okay.
Duke is going to beat up Nevada bad in that Final Four game. That's what I have, and I have UNC over Tennessee. So I have a Duke. UNC
I
final.
love it. I do as well.
Yeah, okay.
I do as well.
Dude,
so,
it has to happen. You know how good
does.
those games have been this year?
Listen.
And they've been so close, too. You had Zion in
that championship game, that would with that rivalry, And the fact that it will be the fourth time they've played because North Carolina won the first 2 regular season games. Duke beat North Carolina by 1 point in the ACC championship game.
With Zion
it's
too.
With Zion. It's been, I don't know, I'll have to look up the stat later on, the last time that Duke and North Carolina have played 4 games in a season, in a full season.
Be a lot.
I know, obviously, they play 3
Have they ever played in the final before?
I do not know. That is a stat that I will have to look up in a minute. But I also have Duke and North Carolina in the championship game in my main bracket. For the Final Four, stepping back for a second, I have Duke versus Michigan, a 1-2. On the other side, I have Virginia versus North Carolina. So 3 teams in the ACC, 3 number 1 seeds,
crazy.
All moving on. But no, Duke, North Carolina.
Wait, so what was it? So you had
Duke and Michigan,
okay,
and then Virginia, North Carolina. Listen, that would be a fantastic. I don't think college basketball could ask for a better Final Four.
I know.
I really don't, and for a national championship game. The ratings for that will be through the roof. So I have Duke winning it all. I think the only thing I will say about Duke is that their backup center, and I'm sorry that I'm blanking on his name right now. I'll have to look up in a minute. But their backup center,
it was Bolden that got hurt.
Bolden, yes. Yeah. Bolden is still injured. He missed the ACC tournament, and it's not quite sure when he'll be back, if he will be back for March Madness at all. He definitely won't be back for the first round. So it would be, I'm just going to guess, like Sweet 16 if he does. That just hurts Duke from a depth standpoint and as far as having length out there, because really right now, Zion is, he's kind of their best rebounder, and they don't really have another guy that's big and lengthy like Bolden. So hopefully they get him back for depth purposes
He should be back,
Zion or if one of those other guys needs a breather. But if they don't have them, that would be the one and only blemish for Duke as to why they would potentially get upset.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Duke has, they obviously play a 16 seed, they'll win that. And then they got UCF, who has like a guy that's like 7'6", that they play, kind of like Mamadou from UCLA a couple of years. Easier matchup. Then they play Virginia Tech, who I believe they beat all 3 times. They did. They did lose to Virginia Tech, but they didn't have Zion. I think it was the game after they lost Zion.
It was, Ryan Johnson, he just said that Bolden will not be back for the
entire tournament.
That's
wow.
what he's saying.
Okay, well that's tough.
That'll be, from a depth standpoint, that's kind of a
But
loss.
see, I actually thought about having Michigan State beat Duke. But it's just that was before I was thinking about that, and then I just realized I was like, man, they ran through the ACC tournament. I know that last game against North Carolina was like tough, and obviously it was close, stuff like that. But it's like, dude, they're too good. I think they at least get like to the Final Four. I have them predicted in the final, but I think they at least get there. But they have Michigan State, and then obviously you get Nevada, so they only really have one tough test before the final two, which is, I think, once you get to the final, that's where the center will affect them. And that's why I have UNC actually beating Duke in the final. I have UNC just figuring out a way to beat Zion. Like we said, the ACC championship game was it was a 1-point game. It was extremely close. UNC could have won it. They were within inches of actually winning the game. They did beat them without Zion twice. And I just think UNC, my dad and I are in agreement with this. We just think that North Carolina, not only do we just want them to be number 1 seed, we believe they'd be in the Final Four. I think they're going to win the whole thing.
Tough to argue.
Yeah, and that game against Tennessee is tough too, because Tennessee has been a top 10 the entire season. They are a very, very good team. I just think North Carolina is a little bit better. So I think North Carolina over Duke. Do you have because you do for the tournament challenge, you have the score. What do you have as the score?
Yeah, I've got Duke 67, North Carolina 65.
I got UNC 78, Duke 77.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
so a little bit higher scoring. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it'll be very close. These teams know each other very well.
Dude.
They both can play, good defensively. I think it'll be more of a low-scoring game. And the thing about Duke is they're not a three-point shooting team. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the nation. So it would, as compared to North Carolina, who's a little bit better. But I still think in that matchup, I think because they know each other so well and you know what you're going to do, I don't see it being that high scoring of a game. But
yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting if those two do make it. And here's your stat that I was looking for, Jared. So no, they have never met in the final.
It's going to happen.
Would you believe they've never even met in the NCAA tournament before?
Really?
They never have.
Oh, that's going to change. That has to change.
Dude,
that has to
Let's
change.
go.
I'm telling you.
UNC,
that would...
Duke. That's what I'm hoping for. Duke, Tennessee would be a great game too. But oh man, I mean, it's just I think
I'm telling you, like Vegas would explode. The betting, it would be crazy. It would be crazy.
It'd be insane.
I hope so. I really hope so.
But yeah, no, that's gonna be interesting. Any last thoughts, really quickly? I mean, we have like a minute left before the podcast. Was there anything else you want to mention about your bracket or anything else that?
You know, like I said, I've made like 4 or 5 brackets, and a few of them are legit. And like I said, I had to have that one where it's just like crazy upsets and stuff that could potentially happen because you never know, but things that probably won't. But just, you know, after trying to be serious with a few of them, I tried to just kind of low-key be a little funny and mess with it. So I'm in a couple brackets, you know, playing for a little bit of money, but nothing too crazy. Are you playing for money?
I think I have like one bracket that's like $10.
Okay, so nothing. You're not playing for like 50 or 100
no,
or anything.
No,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I believe I have the best bracket, obviously. But you know, I'm not gonna throw $50 on it though.
Well, if you believe
you
could
win like
bracket,
500,
put $50 on it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. That's true. That's true. Maybe I should. Maybe I should take your advice, Jared. But,
I'm just saying, man. If you're confident, do it.
All right. So there you go. You hear the music right there. If you're listening on YouTube or you're listening on OC Rock Radio, that is the end of today's podcast. Obviously, now you know that Mike Trout is signing the biggest contract in history. You know that me and Jared have our final 4 pick, or excuse me, have our final pick for the March Madness, and it's the same team but different outcomes. Maybe we do something. Because you're a Duke guy. I'm not a North Carolina guy. Maybe we do. If they actually do get in the final, we'll have to do something for our podcast. We're going to get together. Something, yeah. And then, of course, you know, the NFL free agent signings. We'll probably talk about that next week. We're going to do our MLB season predictions, too, because the MLB season actually has started as well. So, well, that's it, the podcast. For Nick Dina,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio and on Facebook.